It's a huge morning of Disney Lorcana news. I'm covering all the latest news, including Set 9, which has been announced, and we've got a new artwork for Set 9. We've also got a bunch of new artworks for the upcoming Set 7, Archazia's Island, including this one, and this is Archazia. Archazia is this owl-like creature who is a brand new character being introduced into Disney Lorcana. We've never seen Archazia in any other Disney films or anything like that before. Wow, that is a pretty big deal for Disney Lorcana. And we're also going to be speculating, looking at the lore of Disney Lorcana through the flavor text of other cards and see how did we get to this point in the story. What is the story going to look like this year? Give the video a like if you're excited. Big shout out to Card Market who sponsor my channel. I appreciate you. We've got the starter decks, everybody. Amethyst, Steel, Iago, Jafar, Ruby, Sapphire, Bell, and Beast, and we're going to take a closer look at those artworks shortly, but there's more to unpack. We've got the packs. We've got the Mad Hatter, the Mirabelle, and the Bolt, who we have already seen as the artworks for this set's packs. We've also got the Illumineers Trove with Bolt, Mad Hatter, and Mirabelle up there, as well as Beast and Bell on the side. Fair to assume that you're going to have Iago and Jafar on the opposite side. And a big one, it is Fabled. Welcome to the story. Set 9, coming Q3 2025. We know we have Archazia's Island, and then we have the Reign of Jafar, and this is a brand new reveal, Fabled. Of course, we saw with Ursula's return in Q2 of last year, the big bad of Disney Lorcana. We had the cooperative game mode where Ursula was defeated. I would be surprised if we don't have something similar for the Reign of Jafar. And it seems then, after the Reign of Jafar, if we are indeed successful in defeating Jafar, we're going to be going back in time, perhaps? Does something go slightly wrong and Jafar casts a big spell on everybody which sends everyone back in time? It seems like that is a real possibility, and that would be a really interesting and different dynamic for a Disney Lorcana set with a very different theme. We're used to seeing Disney Lorcana with tons of color, whereas this one is much more like black and white, at least at first glance, which also poses the question, is it possible you could get some sort of like colorless card that could be played in any ink color you want? I don't know. That's always something I've been thinking about in Disney Lorcana. We'll talk more about that a little bit later. So how do we get here in this part of the story? Who on earth is Archazia? Well, in set 5, we saw Jafar. This was after Ursula's return, of course. This was Shimmering Skies. He said, "No one will keep me from the broken crown." So we saw Ursula had the Hexawell crown, and Jafar has been after, and he hypnotized our poor friend Basil here. And Basil, the hypnotized mouse, in the latest set, the Azurite Sea, said, footprints from a large owl with droplets of water. Clearly, some avian menace has crossed the Azurite Sea and absconded with the crown. And we also have this artwork and card in Azurite Sea, Owl Island, secluded entrance, which I theorized could be Archazia's Island. I actually theorized that this was potentially a hint towards the next set before we even had the announcement of Archazia's Island, and it certainly seems to be the case. Just to show you this big image of Archazia again, and then Owl Island. It certainly seems as though Owl Island is Archazia's Island. And it seems like Archazia has somehow run off with the crown, and Jafar is going to be after it with Basil, the hypnotized mouse, tracking down Archazia. We know that we had in the Azurite Sea our heroes sailing across the Azurite Sea looking for Owl Island, and they did find it. There's quite a lot of artworks and flavor text of characters going, "Oh, look, the island, we found it." Well, this is the island they were looking for. This was why they were sailing across the Azurite Sea to get to Owl Island, but seemingly something is going to go wrong, and Archazia is seemingly going to be swept aside by Jafar, as of course then the following set is the Reign of Jafar. Well, there's a lot of interesting things going on in this image. We've got a bunch of Dalmatians here in Archazia's Island. We've got a sight of a couple of our Illumineers. We've got one here and another here. There's an Alice here. It looks like Beast and Bell, who are, of course, from the starter decks as well. And in fact, it looks like they're dressed in quite a similar fashion to those images of the starter decks. Let's just pull that back up to show you what I mean. Beast and Bell wearing blue and red, and it very much looks like that is going to be the case as well. And it's, of course, very interesting to see Iago and Jafar knowing that it is going to be the reign of Jafar next. They're clearly going to be up to something. It seems like Iago might be coming in to swoop in and steal the crown for Jafar, perhaps. And Jafar is lurking in the shadows, being up to no good. We've also got a squirrel of some sort. I'm not sure if it's Bucky, but it looks like some form of squirrel. And yeah, that's all I can make out. But there's another image where I also saw Kronk lurking in the background. So big shout out to my friend Ed Templar, who is at the London Toy Fair this week. And they made a lot of these announcements here. And Ed has very kindly sent us over some more pictures that he's taken, which are some even slightly more clear images. Of course, we've already seen this image of Bolt. And there's a lot of speculation that perhaps he's going to be a amber and steel card, with a lot of the, the amber lattice, I think they call this sort of shape, which represents amber. And of course, the tagline, learn new tricks. So as soon as I'm seeing more of these artworks, I'm already really interested in are any of these cards perhaps dual color cards? And I think in particular, what's worth looking at is with the starter decks, right? If we are indeed going to have a new keyword or something like this, which I would be surprised if we don't, learn new tricks, it would definitely seem as though that the starter decks might be an introduction to that. So perhaps we could suggest that Iago is going to be an amethyst steel card. It doesn't exactly look that way, does he? But Jafar definitely fits the amethyst theme. Amethyst steel are where most of the Jafar cards are, to be fair, as well. So if you had to pin Jafar down as a dual ink Jafar card, surely it would be amethyst steel, right? Like, we've got a ton of amethyst steel Jafar cards, and the most competitive Jafar deck is, of course, played with amethyst steel. On the other side, you've got Beast, who is very much dressed in red and has a red feather. But there is a little bit of blue going on, and Belle dressed in blue. I have to say, these two cards aren't giving, these arts aren't giving dual card colours that much. So maybe my prediction is wrong. We're going to have to wait and see. But if we look at the Mad Hatter, for example, the Mad Hatter certainly looks like it would be reasonable to think that he could be an Amethyst Emerald card. And the Mirabelle, this looks like a sapphire card, but then the colouring around her very much looks like an amethyst card. So Mirabelle, perhaps a sapphire amethyst. If Bolt's a dual card colour, it would make sense that the other two, or dual ink colour, it would make sense that the other two arts on the packs are also. So I have a pretty, I would bet something that we're going to see some sort of new keyword. And this Bolt card to me just absolutely screams Steel Amber. It really, really does. I think it will be a really interesting feature. How would this feature work? Well, I'm not sure. I would wager that it will work that you can only play this card if you're playing specifically Amber and Steel. And it will also, therefore, in terms of balance mechanics, it will give the game developers like an extra little nozzle that they can use, because you would be able to make this card inherently more powerful than average, right? You could, for example, you could make a card which would usually be uninkable and just make it inkable in terms of power level, because you're restricted to only being able to play it specifically in Amber Steel. It would be something I think that would be a great addition to Disney Lorcana. I'm also waiting to see there be a reason to play a single ink color, right? Like a mono red deck. In my former game, Gwent, there's a keyword called Devotion, where Gwent, you don't pair two factions together, you just play one, but then there's neutral cards. But in Gwent, if you play a deck with no neutral cards, there are some cards which become more powerful, and that means something like that in Lorcana, I would imagine, will happen at some point, where you have a keyword that's like, if you play only ruby cards, this card becomes better. But I think this is dual ink colours. I really, really do. I'm not convinced that the Belle and the starter deck cards are, but I think this Mad Hatter is Emerald Amethyst. I think this Mirabelle is Sapphire Amethyst. And I think this Bolt is Amber Steel. But that doesn't cover all of the ink colours, interestingly. You might think if we're going to see dual ink colours on the packs, you might have one of each, right? Like, there's no ruby in that mix. So maybe I'm wide of the mark. It is fun to speculate, that is for sure. Another closer image of the Jafar and Iago. It definitely does look like Iago is swooping in to steal something. There's some sort of mysterious figure lurking in the background. And then Jafar looking very amethyst themed with his hat here. I'm really excited for the look of these starter decks. There's some sort of scroll over here as well for Jafar, who's clearly up to no good. And here is another image of this Archazia's Island. There you go. I knew I'd seen Kronk somewhere in the background. So this is not a single player deck. These are the single player decks that have kind of been taken out of their packaging. This is the backing board, and it is that same image. But you can also see Kronk here doing his thing in the background. So confirm we're getting some sort of Kronk card with Yzma in the back, right? It's actually Kronk and Yzma. That is so cool, man. Emperor's New Groove is officially my favorite Disney film. I'd never watched it until about 6 months ago, and I've watched it a couple of times now. I absolutely love it. That is a banger. And I mean, that could be some sort of... two artworks. Could you ever see a Kronk and Yzma card? We do have a Chip and Dale card. Is this going to be a Kronk and Yzma card? I would be so up for that. That would be spicy. Of course, we know that Reign of Jafar is already coming. Just flicking through some of these other images that have been sent to me by my friend Ed. And here are some from online as well. Pretty crisp images here. I think this is actually Ed's image again. Here's another image of Fabled. It's the same. It's just slightly more zoomed in. Of course, we're getting this after the Reign of Jafar. And another image that we got about a week ago from the North American Championships is Tramp, Lady and the Tramp. Is this Lady or Tramp? I think this is Lady. I'm sorry. I actually haven't watched Lady and the Tramp since I was like 3. But this image also just spoke to me as a dual ink color, right? You've got like the patterns of amber very much, but like this emerald hat and the emerald background. Like this one to me was the one that really spoke to me as being a dual ink color alongside Bolt. The amber lattice is something we've seen a lot, like these kinds of shapes. There was an interview with the art director at one point where they really mentioned like the different shapes they use for the different ink colors. And this is definitely amber, but like with this green background, it looks to me like dual ink colors are coming to Disney Lorcana. But I have been wrong before. I will be wrong again. Very exciting news indeed. Big shout out to my friend Ed Templar for sharing this with us. Let me know what you think is going to be happening in Archazia's Island. What is going to happen to poor old Archazia that she just gets introduced and then clearly dominated by Jafar? At least that seems to be the case. Very excited for the reveal season to begin for Archazia's Island. It's not called Archazia's Island, by the way. I actually got to introduce this set at the European Championships and I mispronounced it. I don't think I'm getting invited back. Oops. Big shout out again to Card Market, who sponsor the video and my channel. Great place to buy singles online in Europe. Big shout out to Ed for sending all this stuff over. And shout out to Ravensburger for making an awesome game that makes me very excited for the future. I like that we know the next 3 sets. I think that's pretty cool. And looking forward to covering all of the reveals when we get them for Archazia's Island. Write down in the comments below, do you think we're getting dual ink colors? What do you think Jafar is going to do in order to overthrow this absolutely massive looking owl? I wouldn't want to mess with Archazia, that's for sure. Cheers, guys.